Up next, we have the Youth Sports Journey, Player to Parent and Beyond. This is a very special guest. You will soon see his jersey in the rafters at Georgia Tech. Please help me by welcoming the great, the one and only, Dennis Scott. A sharp-dressed man in the house.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. For those of you that don't know Dennis, I don't know how, but he played professional basketball for a long time, did tremendous things at Georgia Tech. Like I mentioned, he's gonna have his jersey retired November 15th, right?
Yes, ma'am.
The Georgia game, which I'm sure you love.
Sorry, Bulldogs.
You know, he spent 7 years with the Orlando Magic. He's a former McDonald's All-American, and now he has two lovely children playing basketball. Your son plays basketball at Georgia State.
That's right.
And your daughter plays volleyball.
And volleyball at Mount Vernon School in Sandy Springs.
So you've got a lot going on.
Yes.
And the good thing that you can talk about specifically is the fact that not only did you play at a collegiate level, but you played professionally. And that can go back to what it's like to now bringing up two kids who are very competitive with sports. How do you take those lessons that you learned personally, collegiately, professionally, and even when you were a kid, and bring that back to being a parent now, coaching those two?
Well, I think the biggest thing is I try to tell them hard work always prevails. So in today's era, these kids want to get these offers, and you know, I've talked to this coach. We had a great conversation. They're offering me a scholarship. Well, back in our day, you had a letter of intent in front of you. You've accepted it, signed it, moved on, or you waited, and sometimes you would come back, that letter of intent would be gone. So I have a phrase at my house where the work doesn't lie, people do. How do you get better from your freshman year, your sophomore year, your junior year to your senior year, and finally you're ready to take that leap of faith from the hard work and go into college? And that's one of the things I try to make sure I instill in all of my kids, for that matter.
I'm curious, is it hard for you to separate dad and coach in these moments with both your daughter and your son?
Yes, at times, but no, because I've lived it.
Yeah.
So to be able to show your son or your daughter that Naismith National Player of the Year trophy on your mantle in your office, I earned that. No one gave it to me. It wasn't a reporter wrote some article and ranked me #2 in the state. Then I went around town and said I'm excited. So that's another thing that our kids are going through now, is all these rankings. So back then, you had to earn everything that was given. So that's the fun part for me, is to be able to show them that. So when they're working hard, they're getting better. We as parents, you're super excited because you know you've driven them to practice. You've driven them to lift weights, the training, get up extra shots, volleyball practice, whatever it may be. You know you've taken them there to get better. Now you're happy.
You and I were having a conversation before this just about your playing days at Georgia Tech and how you kind of turned the page whenever you decided to hone in and focus on your craft. What's the biggest thing that you learned when you were playing that maybe some of these younger student athletes can take from?
That there are tons of kids that have the same dream you have. How hard are you working to attain that dream? What work are you putting in? What sacrifices are you willing to do? And I think that was some of the things for me, that people who know my story, I had to eat better. I had to take care of my body. Once I did that, all the good things came to fruition.
A lot has changed since you were playing, and it feels like every time we turn around, things are changing, and people are having to adapt to that change. One of which I know you can talk about for a very long time, and everybody in here knows probably what I'm about to say, NIL. It is changing the landscape of how we operate, not only at the collegiate level, but both at the high school level as well. Give me your #1 opinion on how NIL is headed, how it's going, and what do you think the future holds for NIL?
Well, it's definitely the Wild Wild West now.
For sure.
With NIL. And I think for parents who come and ask me how did I handle it, well, it's called name, image, and likeness. Does your daughter, does your son have a great name? Do they have a great image? Do they have a great likeness? What do we mean, people? So if I go back to 1990, we went to the Final Four. I know there were a lot of number 4 jerseys with Scott sold. I got $0 for it. I know there was a lot of number 12 Kenny Anderson jerseys sold. We got $0. Same thing with Brian Oliver wearing number 13. So I think that's where Pandora's box got opened up, where if a kid or if a young lady's playing volleyball, softball, and their jerseys are being sold, that's their mom and dad's name. They should deserve it. Now, on the flip side of it, today, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, UCLA, and Maryland, they're all recruiting me. They all have $1 million on the table. This is today's climate. Where do I go to school? I'm still picking Georgia Tech. UCLA is too far away home from Washington, D.C. Getting $1 million, I'm probably getting $450 because of the taxes in California. Right?
Right.
Go to Syracuse, 37 inches of snow. Mom, no daggone way we come to this snow. There's no way. Maryland, you stay close to home. Lynn Bias had passed away. There's a whole lot of rules going on. I don't know if I want that. So I come down here to Atlanta, Southern Hospitality, sweet tea, Georgia peach. I was like, Mom, I think I want to come down south. So if you put that in today's time and everyone's offering the same so-called NIL money, I'm still picking Georgia Tech for all the right reasons.
Now we're seeing NIL. I kind of mentioned it, but we're starting to see it trickle down to the high school level, especially here in the state of Georgia. What are some of the challenges that you think that presents?
Well, making sure our kids are picking the school for the right reason. And I was telling a parent the other day, I said, if your son goes to 4 different schools and does well, who retires his jersey? Where is his family? When it's time to go in business after basketball, football, baseball, whatever it may be, where's that first phone call? And I think that sometimes gets a little muddy that, yes, the opportunity's there for NIL, but make sure you're still picking the right school for you, because why pick a school, then you're there for 6 months and one little thing goes wrong and you call home, Mom, Dad, I want to transfer. For what? Well, the coach said he was going to do this. Well, I'm not playing that many minutes. I hang up the phone. I said, because I couldn't call my mom and dad and say, hey, I'm way down here in Atlanta and Coach Crimmins is not playing me well. I got to keep working. So that's why we as parents got to make sure our children pick the right school that fits them so they can play. Because I don't know if your son or daughter can play sitting on the bench shaking a pom-pom.
You're kind of saying this, but it is probably more important now than ever for parents to guide, parents or whoever, to guide kids in the right direction. How critical is that in this moment when NIL is becoming at the forefront of many student athletes' conversations?
Make sure you do your homework. Find the right school for your son or daughter. Find the right youth program for your son or daughter. I went through it in real time, and his dad now loves me because I told him the truth. I said, your son's not that good. He looked at me like I was crazy. By the end of the 3 years, I said, I'm going to give you a choice. You can play on the circuit team, but you're only going to play about 10 minutes a game. But if you stay local, you're going to play about 25, 28 minutes a game, and now I'll be able to showcase your son. First 2 years, he didn't listen. Going to a senior, he listened. Now he has a scholarship going to college. Now the dad calls me every day. I said, no, I'm good. I'm just glad you listened because now your son's happy. And that's the key, because his son played, and now the school saw him. I want this kid. I want him on my campus. And now everything works out. So I think that's the biggest message for mom and dads, anyone listening. Make sure you do your homework and make sure your child has a chance to play. They have to play, because otherwise, how does that college coach know he or she can play? Yeah,
that's a good point. And Mark talked about this a little bit when it comes to specialization for young athletes. Do you feel like we've seen the end of the 3-sport athlete?
I think for the parents who are not afraid of the unknown, because I to this day, football is still my favorite sport, but obviously basketball pays the bills.
Yeah.
Right? So on Sundays, everyone knows I'm watching Cowboys all day long since I've been a knee-high kid, because I couldn't take the Deadskins. If any Deadskin fans out there, I'm sorry. So it's like,
hey, the Falcons are exciting right now.
Of course, I love my local team, but being able to navigate, I guess is the best word to use.
Yeah.
We as parents, sometimes it's hard to get out the way. Because you got to pick the right high school, you pick the right trainer. If it's volleyball, you find the right volleyball coach. Find those coaches, find those schools, and then go have a seat. It was hard for me to go have a seat, but I knew there were certain things I knew very well, and I knew there were certain things I didn't know. So I had to go out there and find the right trainer for my kids. So now I drive, drop them off, sit out there in the car like everyone else, and watch a movie or something on my iPad until they come out of training.
That's got to be so hard for you to do, isn't it?
It's tough. It's tough. But if I can be honest to mom and dad, I have to look myself in the mirror and be honest to myself.
And that goes back to what you were talking about in finding the right coaches. You have the trust in the people that have the hands on the kids that are teaching them, so you can sit in the car and watch things on your iPad.
You and I were speaking about it earlier, and Lenny Daniels, good friend, our kids go to the same school. So the previous coach, who was at Mount Vernon, who's now down in Orlando, trust me, mom and dad, there were plenty games. Why the hell is my son not in the game? He only has 2 fouls. Why is he still sitting there? They're not calling enough plays for him. He's only taking 5 shots tonight. He's only taking 3 threes. I'm going to say something to the coach. No, you're not. Set your butt down and sit down and be a mom and dad. So as an ex-player, I
you got an applause for that.
I still have to bite my tongue, set my butt down, and go home.
It's a lesson that you had to learn, and I'm sure many parents in the audience had to learn as well. You and I were talking about whether or not there was an it factor for these young student athletes. There are so many intangibles that you need in anything in life to be successful in what you do. But what are some of those things that you feel like, as a young student athlete, or not even a student athlete yet, you need in order to take sports to the next level?
When your son or daughter wakes you up to go work out.
Did that happen to you?
That's the beginning of the it factor. Yes.
Oh, good.
Both of my kids. When they were in middle school, I'd say, let's go work out. No, I want to go swimming. I want to go play with little Johnny across the street. Okay, bye. Because when you force your child to want to be great, it's not going to happen. I say it again. When you try to force your child to be great, it will not happen. What do you mean? Well, the day my son Trey woke up and said, Mom, take me to the gym at 6 in the morning. I want to work out before school. Dad, after practice, I want to go get extra shots up after practice. That's what great players do. For anyone in this building that knows a great player, that's the mindset of the steps of they're doing on their own. Now, if they're talented, along with that hard work, then you're going to be watching them on Saturdays and Sundays.
I want to talk about your daughter for a second. We saw some of those numbers with volleyball, and she is a high school athlete playing volleyball. That sport has skyrocketed within the last couple of years. And shout out to Georgia Tech. They look good so far this season.
They look real good.
I know you're excited about that. But what have you noticed when it comes to volleyball in particular with these young ladies?
That they're super athletic, that they don't get credit for. I think the biggest thing for me is I'm glad they changed the rules. So back when you go to games in the 80s and 90s, you had to serve to get a score, and the games took forever. I think that's why a lot of us casual fans left. But now the scoring has changed. It's more exciting, and the girls are intense, and they're look like you get a kill, and a girl looks another girl through. I'm like, ooh, she really just gritted on her like that. I like this. That's showing their personalities and now helping to sell them as young women out there to the world. So now when I put on my daughter's volleyball jersey, well, it's a little snug, but I had to get a larger one. I look forward to it now. Yeah. You're like, wait a minute, yep, that's your personality. You're the first dad to have on a daughter volleyball jersey, but I wear it in pride.
And there's so many opportunities for young ladies with volleyball now. I mean, they can aspire to go to the Olympics. They can play professionally. We have a couple of professional leagues here in Atlanta. What would you say to some of those young ladies who have some of those dreams and goals?
Well, for my daughter, she woke up and said, Mom, Dad, so you actually mean someone's going to pay for my education? And I can get a free education, and Dad, I don't have to get in your pocket anymore? I said, please, darling, please take volleyball serious so you can get out of my pocket. That was the revelation for her to want to take the game more serious. And then having fun, Some of you people know that she was in Hilton Head this past weekend, the volleyball tournament. So some of those numbers Mark was showing, I know I was part of the hotel, I was part of the rental car, I was part of the food, I was part of all the extra stuff. So all those numbers are real.
You contributed to those
Yes.
numbers for sure, and you
Yes.
will do a lot more of that in the future, I'm sure. Speaking of that, travel sports, navigating that as a parent, how do you do that? What does it come down to?
Same thing I said earlier, people. You got to be honest with your child. It's all about playing. I know people want to say, oh, yeah, I played with this EYBL team. Yes, I played with 3SSB, or I played on this Under Armour. So how many good kids are there? If there's 3 major travel circuits, and then you have now Made Hoops, it's probably the #1 independent circuit. So that's 4. Are that really that many elite kids out there? Who's heard the phrase late bloomer? I know I can't see hands, but just kind of raise your hand so your neighbor can see. There's more late bloomers than there are kids who are so-called the #1 sophomore in the country, the #1 junior in the country. He's the #1 senior. Then you go to draft night 2 years ago, like, where the hell's that kid I thought was the #1? It really doesn't mean anything until the time comes your senior year, junior year, whatever it may be, that you're going into a draft or a college to come recruit your son.
So why are travel sports important?
If you pick the right travel organization, it's for exposure. Now, the story I said earlier, you can also get exposed, meaning that your son or daughter really can't play. And once that happens, you've kind of crushed your kid because they're traveling and you're sitting on the bench. And if your mom or dad, now I'll say this very sincerely, if you're happy spending all your money and your son or daughter's happy sitting on the bench, travel. Not high school, because high school's high school. That's different. Why are you spending extra money to travel to sit still? You're traveling to get exposure. I walk into a tournament, what do parents first thing they do? They look over there to see how many college coaches are sitting over there, right? I don't have a problem with that. Is your son or daughter playing? Then why are we here? Just to spend the money? Because we know LakePoint and other facilities around the world, they're going to take your money. They're going to take it gladly because you're here. So make sure you've done your due diligence and find the right travel program so your son or daughter can play. Play, I say it again, play.
Going back to how much things have changed ever since you played, what's one of the biggest things that you look at now, especially because you're living it as a dad with 2 kids who play sports, where you say, gosh, I wish I would have had that when I was younger?
I wish my dad could have been around more because the biggest thing I think I saved my son Trey from is being a hired gun. It hurts my heart to watch a kid play a game at 10 o'clock a.m. on court 1. His team lost. Then at 1 o'clock, he has another jersey on. He's playing for that team. And mom and dad allowed it. Then lost again. Then he's playing on the championship game later on that night on a 3rd team in one day. And they allowed it to happen. I wish my dad would have been around so I didn't go through it because I was a hired gun. It drives me crazy. So by the time Trey became a senior, hey, you think, you lost, you think your dad let me? You must don't know who my dad is.
Okay, I want to wrap up with something a little personal. We've been talking about your jersey getting put up in the rafters there, November 15th against Georgia. You excited about that? I know that's going to bring back a ton of memories. What's the feeling around that?
Ooh, you say the best for last. 3 years ago, my mom was in the nursing home, and she's watching television. And I don't know what she was watching. And she called me and said, baby, she said, how come number 4 is not in the rafters? Whew. I said, Mom, I haven't graduated yet. She said, what you waiting on, baby? I said, Mom, good. She said, well, for my 81st birthday, I would like for you to graduate. So I just turned 56. She just turned 82. I graduated last December. She's the reason why my jersey is being retired. I've gotten a question every year since 1990 from our Final Four run. Tara August is here today. When I went to her 3 years ago, I said, Tara, can you tweak my schedule for the next 2.5 years? I'm going back to school Fridays and Saturday nights, and I'm also getting my master's. So I also got my master's as well.
That's awesome.
You got me good on that one.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Dennis Scott. Congratulations. It's so awesome. So great.